All right, we'd like to say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Bible study, or not Bible study, Sunday school preview for the Sunlight Missionary Baptist Church. Uh, this coming Sunday, we're going to be celebrating the pastors or my 7th year anniversary. So we're not going to have Sunday school on that time. We want to give everybody a break, just a little bit of a break. So I'm doing the Sunday school review really, really, really early, so that everyone won't have to spend so much time on Sunday focusing on Sunday school. You can get it early and take sort of a break on Sunday. But we thank you all for joining us, and we trust that something will be said, will be of some spiritual gain and benefit to you. Our lesson for Sunday is entitled, in a book it's entitled Time to Party. But we don't too much care for that fleshly ideology. So it's entitled Time to Celebrate. Our lesson is coming from Exodus chapter 15. And it is the part of the account. This is a specific action where the Israelites, after passing over the Red Sea, passing through the Red Sea, and Pharaoh and his army all got drowned. Well, this is the Israelites, led by Moses, honoring God and celebrating their deliverance from bondage in Egypt, and God destroying their enemies, the Israelites, so that the Egyptians will not be bothering them again. The Egyptians will not be bothering the Israelites again. And again, this is a time of celebration. This is an incident, a specific celebration that was had. And that's coming from the 15th chapter of Exodus. There's selected verses through that. And I'm going to go through a little bit more to show why they're celebrating. It's a time of worship and celebration, worship and praise. And you'll see it's pretty good. The key verse is from Exodus chapter 15, verse 20, which says this: Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a thimble in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. This is a praise dance and celebration dance to the Lord for his deliverance and for his mercy and for him executing judgment. All of those things. But that's where we're coming from today. We're going to start off, as always, with our Sunday school motto from 2 Timothy 2:15. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needed not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. 2 Timothy 2:15. And the motto prayer in unison: Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Again, we thank you all for joining us. For those of you who are looking on, this is my Make America the United States again shirt. Part of what we do is we want to encourage people to be good citizens and to do that which is pleasing in the sight of God. Division, hate, discontent, and chaos, negativity, inhospitality, being inhospitable, and not being bad neighbors to your fellow citizens and to your fellow man. None of that stuff is pleasing in the sight of God. None of it. And that's one political party is trying to promote unity, love, compassion, and human decency. And the other political party is promoting the exact opposite. And when you look at the number of voters that, while polling, the various people take polls to see, trying to see who's voting for who, and it gets kind of, you would think, for any decent country, for any country that follows anything like right or wrong, it wouldn't even be close. But in the United States, it's really close. So that lets you know that fully a large number of the population of the United States are not decent people. They are not good. They got no love for their fellow man. They got no compassion. They got no plain human decency. And that's way too many people, because this stuff is relatively simple. Love thy neighbor as thyself. That's relatively simple. It is a command of God, and fully a large number of people are going in just the opposite direction. And for the rest of you, you don't get to pretend that that's not true. You can't pretend, Americans are good people. They're just been fooled. Nobody's been fooled. Nobody's been fooled. All right. But when, United States, when we move past the current desire for way too many people in the United States, when we move past the hatred and division that so many are proposing or encouraging, whenever the rest of us move past that and leave them people behind, then we will have cause to celebrate. You will have cause to celebrate when the work of fixing and removing the dark-hearted people out of our government, when they are gone, then you can start to celebrate. Then we can start to celebrate. But no celebrating until the work is done. The truth of the matter is, the work is we are not going to be able to do this on our own. We're going to have to ask the Lord to help. We're going to have to ask the Lord to move on the hearts and minds of people, all people. Because truth of the matter, everyone that aligns against God is against God. He ain't helping people that are aligned against him. And that includes many people on both sides of the political persuasion. On both sides of it, a large number of people are opposed to God. God is not going to force decency and goodness on anybody. You're going to have to choose that for yourself. But today's lesson is about the children of Israel. The children of Israel. How God delivered them. How God delivered them to make their lives and their children's lives better. That is God's will, that everyone's lives be better. That is God's will, that everyone's lives be better. And just like the Egyptians, or the Egyptian rulers anyway, was resisting the life being good for the Israelites. They had their own agenda. They had their own agenda. And they didn't want the Israelites to be happy. They wanted them to be miserable, and they did everything within their power to make it so. But God heard the cry of his chosen people. When the Israelites cried unto the Lord brought them out. Whenever the Israelites cried unto the Lord brought them out. Anyone that has ever been any major situation in the world, a great trauma and tragedy, came to an end because someone cried out unto the Lord God of heaven. You really do have to ask God to intervene on your behalf. You really do have to pray to the Lord to intervene on your behalf. And you have to get right with him first. All right. Our lesson is entitled Time to Celebrate. Celebrate. Devotional reading is coming from the 104th number of Psalm, verses 1 through 9. And this is a psalm of celebration, specifically of the Lord. Here's what it says. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty. It's a worship song. It's all about God. It says, who covered thyself with light as with a garment, who stretched out the heavens like a curtain. This isn't about what God has done for man. We praise God for his goodness to us. But everything else is just God being God. It says, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the winds. The entirety of the earth and every aspect of it is God's. It says, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming sword. Now, the flaming sword thing, that is talking about the cherubim. There's more than one class of spiritual beings that aren't humans. There's more than one category. Around the throne of God, there are four. There are four things that are called cherubim. An individual is a cherub. And if you see drawings about cherub, they're little cutie pie things. But cherubs are not cutie pie things. The cherubim are fiery destruction things. They are way too much. They are way too much. They're one of the things that have the 6 wings that fly around in the presence of God. Now, 5 of them were made. 5 of them were made. 5 of them were created. There were 1 on each side of the throne of God and 1 above the throne of God. The one above the throne of God was the singing one. its name was Lucifer. It got too big for its britches and had to get tossed out. Book of Daniel teaches you that Satan is not an angel. Satan is a cherub. Whole different kind of thing. A whole different kind of thing. Also, there are 4 seraphim. 4. There's just 4 of them. There are a countless number of other things that we call angels, or the messengers of God. Angels do not have wings. Jacob's ladder, they're walking up and down because they don't have wings. But there are seraphim and cherubim, just 4, in the presence of God with their winged things. Then there are what we refer to as angels, the wingless things, and they're just coming and forth, Jacob's ladder and all like that. But he maketh his angels spirits, his ministers, those that minister to him in his presence, as flaming fire, as cherubs. It says, who laid the foundation of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. Verse 6 says, thou covered it with the deep, as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. This is talking about made the earth. The earth. Earth being dirt. The earth is one big old pile of dirt. Water sits on that pile of dirt. That water is the ocean. Earth is a big pile of dirt with water put on it. The water is the ocean. Now covered it with the deep as with a garment, the waters stood above the mountains. It says, verse 7, at thy rebuke they fled. This is part of the creation. At the voice of thy thunder they haste away. So they go up by the mountains, they go down by the valleys, into the places where thou hast founded for them. Again, this is part of the creation. We know how rain falls in the mountain as snow, melts, goes down, flows down to the ocean as water. Snow melts to water, goes down, creates the rivers. Melted snow creates the rivers. Melted snow is what rivers are made of. So there's a cycle of water. Falls down as snow, turns into the rivers, goes out to the sea, sun evaporates it, takes the water back up to the mountain, and it falls down as snow. That's a recycling path of water. That's how the rivers exist. They are made of fallen and melted snow. That's God's cycle for it. Verse 9, thou hast set a bound that they may not pass over. This is the waters. The waters. Thou hast set a bound that they may not pass over, that they turn not again to cover the earth. The laws of physics, the way water actually works, when waves come on the shore, they should, by the laws of physics, just keep going. The laws of physics dictates that waves, when they come ashore, shouldn't stop. Water just keep going around. It should flow over the top of mountains and stuff. That should just happen. But God has said it. God has did what God has done, so that doesn't happen. And when we see that every now and then, when you get a really big wave, when you get a really big wave, like a tsunami, and it goes to the shore and it just keeps going. That's how nature actually works. God has put limitations on nature, on well, everything actually. But we are able to live on earth because of the power and will of God in restraining the natural forces that exist. Part of his design for everything. Now, for today's lesson, time to celebrate. In the biblical context, this is what it says. After enduring the 10 plagues, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, finally allowed the Israelites to leave Egypt. It's not like he had a whole lot of choice there. Because overnight, in the country of Egypt, in the entire nation of Egypt, just in Egypt, in every house, in every family, the firstborn child, in every family, the firstborn child, no matter what age they were, if it was a newborn, it's a newborn. If it was a toddler, they're a toddler, teenager. If they're 20 years old and they're the firstborn child, that's when they died. They're 90 years old. Whatever it was, the firstborn child in that family died. God killed them. This is God now. When God passed through, he did. In the entire country of Egypt, the Egyptians did not care anymore when that happened. They didn't care about the Israelites. They didn't care about anything. They would gladly, with great joy, but with more than a little terror, they gladly were willing to throw the Israelites out of their land. And they wanted the Israelites gone. Period. They didn't care. They just wanted them gone. And they gave them gold. They gave the Israelites literally anything they wanted. Anything the Israelites wanted to take, they took. Those Egyptians in the land of Egypt paid the Israelites to be gone. They didn't want to deal with Jehovah, the God of Israel. The Israelites or the Egyptians, their rulers and stuff, after that 10th plague, it was over. They didn't want nothing to do with the Israelites. However, Pharaoh finally allowed the Egyptians to leave Egypt. Led by Moses, they set up camp near the Red Sea. However, Pharaoh had a change of heart and decided to pursue them with his army. Now, this is Pharaoh. He's the king. The king is in charge of the army. If the army does if the people with the guns and the swords follow the orders of the rulers, basically, whoever is in charge of the people, whoever is actually in charge of the people with the guns and the swords, whoever's in charge of the army is the one that's in charge of the nation. Whoever's in charge of the army is in charge of the nation. In reality, the army is in charge of the nation. That's the way it is. So whoever the army is backing, that person is in charge, period. Think what you like and believe what you will. But humans are made of flesh and blood. No matter what office they hold or how much popularity they may have, or what the voters want, what the voters decide, the people with the guns, whoever they're backing, that's the person that's actually in charge. Because humans are made of flesh and blood. And you put enough lead in them, they die of lead poisoning. And then it doesn't matter what the people voted on. It doesn't matter their popularity. Oh, give them a big enough dosage of lead, they die of lead poisoning. And the people who control the lead, the people who have the most guns, which is the military, they're in charge. Our country is designed so that no one actually controls our military directly. No one has direct authority over the military. No politician has direct authority over the military. I know people don't understand that, but they really don't. The president doesn't control the military. The Congress doesn't control the military. Pharaoh had a change of heart and decided to pursue them with his army. God had instructed Moses to have the people camp at Pi-Hahiroth, which was strategically positioned between Migdal and the Red Sea. This move made it appear as if the original Israelites were wandering, thus confusing Pharaoh to ensure that he would chase after the Israelites. Yes, tragedy. God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Now, most people misunderstand that. They think it to mean Pharaoh. God made Pharaoh worse. God fixed Pharaoh's heart so Pharaoh would not listen. That's not what happened. Everyone is under the conviction of God the Holy Spirit. God convicts the heart of man to get man to do the right thing. That's what God does. God convicts the heart of man to do the right thing, to do what is right in the sight of God. Man, in rejecting the will of God, which is to do good, in rejecting the will of God, conviction of God to do good, hardens his heart against God. So God ain't convicting Pharaoh, making his heart hard. God is convicting Pharaoh to leave the Israelites alone. But since that is God's will and that is a good thing, it's not Pharaoh's will because he's pretty wicked. And he hardened his own heart. God just convicted his heart. Pharaoh rejected that conviction, therefore hardened his heart. God just convicted him. Him rejecting God is what hardened his heart. God does not make people evil. God does not tempt man. God convicts man. He says, as Pharaoh's chariots closed in, the Israelites cried out in fear, but Moses encouraged them, assuring them that God would fight for them. It says, he lifted his staff over the Red Sea, and the strong east wind divided the waters, creating a dry path. Now, we spoke about the waters and stuff in the devotional reading. The physical universe, the earth in its entirety and everything about it, is under the command of God. The wind came. God sent the wind. God caused this. God did all this. Everything that you're reading about, this is the hand of God at work. It ain't just happening. God is doing it. Divided the waters, creating a dry path. And that's the thing. That's the thing. The waters were moved out of the way, and the ground became dry. The waters were moved out of the way, and the waters were moved back, and the bottom of the sea became dry. Not muddy, no puddles, but it became dry. Now, see, that is not something that happens under any circumstances. That is not something that can happen under any circumstance. That is not a natural thing. That is a supernatural thing being done. The Israelites crossed the sea safely while the Egyptian army pursued them. Once the Israelites had made it to safety, the waters returned and drowned Pharaoh's army. And the waters in turn, God stopped holding the waters back. Because the Israelites, when they went through down on dry land, they can see the water way up on both sides of them. They went down below the surface of the water where the water was just standing up there. And Pharaoh and them stupidly followed. This event marked the decisive exodus, the absolute exodus from Egypt. The Israelites bore witness to God's power and deliverance firsthand. This is the thing. This is the thing. Now, just remember this. Remember what we're talking about. Remember what it's talking about. And remember this later on when the Israelites decide, well, we want to go back to Egypt. We want to go back to Egypt. We had it good in Egypt. Remember them other 9 plagues? Yeah, all that stuff actually happened. And the Israelites saw it. They saw the power of God demonstrated. And remember that. Always remember that. These people saw firsthand God at work. Remember that when they say, let us go back to Egypt. Remember that. And you see that same thing, that same hardness of heart in people today. People that have no love for anybody, have no compassion, no human decency. That is the context of this celebration. After all that, after God did all that, celebration. Exodus chapter 15. We got 3 outlines. Wholehearted worship, God's holiness and wonders. Wholehearted worship from Exodus chapter 15, verses 1, 2, and 3. Then got God's holiness and wonders from Exodus chapter 11, verse 13. And then the third outline, celebrating God's victories. And again, God's victories, because this is to the Israelites, this is obvious that it is God that is doing this. It is God that has done this. And these people are seeing it with their own eyes. And it ain't going to be too long down the road where they're going to be, no. We don't. Aaron, make us an idol so we can go back to Israel. We'll go back to Egypt. We'll carry the idol before us, the golden calf. We'll put that up on our shoulders and we'll put that out front and we'll go back to Egypt. Yeah. Remember the Egyptians now, the people, kicked them out. They didn't want the Israelites in Egypt no more because of what the Lord did. Because of what the Lord did to all of Egypt. The Egyptians weren't stupid. They didn't want nothing to do with the Egyptians anymore, with the Israelites anymore. But the Pharaoh, being the king, now, remember about the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was considered a god. Not an actual god, but their authority was so that such that people sort of pretended, whatever you say, Almighty Pharaoh, because whatever your word is law here, so you're practically a god here. So we'll give you that credit. It didn't end well. It did not end well. Not a deity, a god as in a deity or one of the false gods like Odin or Anubis or any of them. But they just gave him credit. Said, you're all right, Pharaoh. We'll give you a little credit. Celebrating God's victory. And it's God that has done this. And he has done this for a reason. He has done this for a reason. It's also why God, the 10 plagues, were very specific things. Egypt had a bunch of gods. Egypt had a bunch of gods. And each one of their gods was a god over something specific, like a god over the waters, a god over the cattle, a god over the trees. Now, the 10 plagues was God Jehovah showing his power and authority over whatever that god that Egyptian god, like the god of the waters. God changed the water to blood and showed that the Egyptian god, Egyptian god of the water, wasn't a real thing. He's not real. Because what Jehovah did, whatever the other god didn't try and stop or could not stop. Each one of the 10 plagues was an action against the make-believe, whatever make-believe god the Egyptians had made up. The only god I know by name is Anubis, the death god. So the 10th plague was a demonstration that, yeah, the death god, ain't no such thing. Ain't no such thing, because he cannot, what Jehovah did, nothing. No one even tried to stop it, tried to undo it or anything. But the plagues were against the Egyptians and the Egyptian gods, the gods that they made up, to demonstrate to the Egyptians that their gods were not real. And this was not just demonstrated to the Egyptians, but to all the nations around the Egyptians. They saw this. The Egyptians were considered the most powerful, greatest nation, and their gods were considered the most powerful and greatest because, well, Egypt was the most powerful nation. Therefore, its gods had to be the stronger gods. And you get the Israelites, who are nothing, but their God, on the other hand, Jehovah, Yahweh, actually did stuff. The single God of the Israelites obliterated Egypt. The Egyptian gods could do nothing with the God of the Israelites. They could do nothing. They could not stop him at all. And the nation, mighty nation of Egypt, got laid to waste. And there was nothing the gods of Egypt could do. This was demonstrated to everyone. Every known nation saw that happen. And they were terrified. When the Egyptians kicked out the Israelites, get out and don't come back. Never come back. That's what the Egyptian people were saying. Get out. You want gold? Take the gold. Take the gold. Take the fancy dance. Take whatever you want. Just go away. Please, we beg you, leave, leave, leave. Now, to be sure, there were a bunch of Egyptians that had associated with and married into with the Israelites. And they went too. They went with the Israelites. When the Israelites were kicked out, their intermarried people, they went also. But the rest of the Egyptians didn't want anything to do with the Israelites. No more. That 10th plague, oh boy. And again, all the other nations with their ambassadors and people like that in Egypt, they saw what happened to Egypt. And they spread word to their homes. Look, if the Israelites come, run away. Because the Israelites were a bunch of people. They had no army. But they had Jehovah. And that's all they needed. the armies, the Egyptian army, the greatest, mightiest army at that time, died all at once. Died. Well, not literally all of them, but the ones that Pharaoh had with him, they all went out, they all died. And the rest of the nation saw this. The nations of the land of Canaan saw this and reported it back. The people of the country of Jericho, the city of Jericho, that word was spread to them. Yeah. The terror of Jehovah and of the Israelites passing through your country. That was a real thing. And only a devilish person, a dark-hearted, devil-filled person, only such a person would risk the destruction of their country and their army. Because once again, the Israelites were nothing. The God of the Israelites were everything. And that is the problem. That was the problem for these various, again, people. Now, our lesson. Luckily, this is a short lesson because it talks about some stuff. It is the context, the background, that what the lesson is based on. That's everything. That is everything. That's what you need to know. That's what you need to understand. Now, of course, I spent 47 minutes talking about that, which is like way too long. But what you gonna do? Well, it's not way too long. But this, see the terror on everybody else, but for the Israelites, it's just the opposite. Joy, 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 happy, happy, peace, and joy. They're not in bondage anymore. They're on the desert. You know, at night in the desert, it's freezing. Not for them. It's nice and warm. It's dark. You can't see nothing. Not for them. They got this fire in the sky at night, keeping everything lit up. And they're lit up at night. They can see everything. They're nice and warm. In the desert, there's no water, but they got all this water. This is a big old rock following them around, providing them all the water they need. They have everything they need. In the daytime, instead of the cooking instead of the sun beating down on them, just making them miserable, they got a nice cloudy sky. The earth itself, the laws of physics, all of them were manipulated, altered to benefit the Israelites. They literally got water out of a rock. That's where they are. And the first outline is wholehearted worship. After their deliverance and their happy, happy, joy, joy. This is what it says. Wholehearted worship, Exodus chapter 15, verses 1, 2, and 3 says, Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord. They sang unto the Lord and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Giving credit where credit is due. This is God that has done this. Said the horse and his rider has he thrown into the sea. Pharaoh's army has been destroyed. The army of man, the armies of man simply got wiped out of existence. They had no chance to fight. The armies of man were simply destroyed. No chance whatsoever to do anything. Verse 2, this is what they continue to say. The Lord is my strength and song. The Lord is my strength and song. And he has become my salvation. All of the things that the Israelites had suffered in the past, that was a thing of the past. All their sufferings have now become a thing of the past because God has delivered them from them. It says, he is my God, and I will prepare him a habitation. It says, my father's God, and I will exalt him. Now, he is my God, I will prepare him a source of habitation. This is for future stuff, both for the tabernacle and for the coming temple. There is no place for God. Yeah, now the Egyptians have all these altars and temples and all this stuff. They got all this stuff. Jehovah has no place, nor does he need one. Remember also, the Israelites are idol worshipers. A lot of them are idol worshipers, not all to be sure, but they have been amongst the Egyptians. So they learned worshiping in a place, worshiping a thing. So this is part of their mindset. God knows this. So in due time, he will establish the tabernacle. No thing for them to see and worship, but a focus for their attention. Because they actually need such a thing. I will prepare him a habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him. Verse 3 says, the Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. And the name is Jehovah, Yahweh, the self-existing God, the one without a beginning or end. All the made-up gods have a beginning and the end, and an end. They were created, and they will be destroyed in due time. It goes on down, and it talks about a lot of stuff about why that is. Verse 4 says this: Pharaoh's chariots and his host has he cast into the sea. His chosen captains also are drowned in the Red Sea. The depths have covered them. They sank into the bottom like a stone, as a stone. It says, thy right hand, O Lord, has become glorious in power. Thy right hand, O Lord, has dashed in pieces the enemy. God has not just delivered the Israelites, he has destroyed the Egyptians. Saving is part of justice. Saving the innocent is part of justice. Destroying the wicked, punishing the sinful is the other part of justice. So yes, punishing the guilty is required. It says, in the greatness of verse 7, in the greatness of thine excellency, thou hast overthrown them that rose up against thee. Now, the purpose of the Israelites, the The purpose of the Israelites were to spread the worship of Jehovah throughout the land of Canaan and throughout the world. They can't do that while they're in bondage in Egypt. They can't spread the worship of the one true God all over the land of Canaan and out and beyond while they're in bondage in Egypt. Hence, freed them from bondage, brought Egypt to its knees, and the rest of the world trembling in their shoes, not because of the Israelites, but because of the God of the Israelites. The one who's the single purpose of the Israelites is to spread the knowledge and worship of that God. It says, in the greatness of thine excellency, thou hast overthrown them that rose up against thee. Thou sendest forth thy wrath, which consumeth them as stubble. Yeah, they're just like, there ain't no, when the hand of God moved, the only thing that happens was that people died. There is no fighting against God. There is no resisting God. The judgment of God is sure. It's not stoppable. Just make sure the judgment of God ain't coming up against you. All right, the second outline, we'll stop reading in there. See what it's talking about. This is why God is worshipped and praised for his goodness. Now, he's praised for his goodness to the Israelites. He's worshipped for executing judgment against the wrong, against the wicked. That's part of what God is. He is the author of justice. When he executes judgment, that's part of God being God. He is worshipped for that. What he does for us as individuals, for our benefit, that's where praise comes in. He does good things for us, praise. He does a good thing for our neighbors, praise. Second out, God's holiness and wonders from Exodus chapter 15, verses 11 through 13. This is what that says. Who is like unto thee, O God, amongst the gods? Now, the other gods are not real. There are some angelic beings that sometimes pretended to be gods. The humans made their idols and worshiped their idols. And every now and then, one of them fallen angels would make something move to reinforce the worship of the idol. Every now and then, one of the fallen angels would do something to reinforce the idolatry of the humans. Let me say that again. Every now and then, one of the fallen angels, Satan and his 1/3, every now and then, one of them would do something to reinforce the idolatry. It didn't make the idol the real thing. Didn't make it real. But if you worship idols, You ask for a sign, and some snickering fallen angels give you a sign, then you just believe, yeah, my God is real. Yeah, Diana is real. Zeus is real. I asked for a sign, and then that thing fell off the cabinet there. I asked for a sign. Did you not see the flame rise up for that minute there? You saw it. I asked for a sign, and the flame rose up. Therefore, the idol that I made, that must be real. The God behind it must be real. He just showed me he's real. And you got these fallen angels, oh, they're just snickering their butts off. Say, man, these humans are stupid. They deserve to go to hell. That's Satan. He's awful. That's basically what they do. Fallen angels, they reinforce the idolatry of man. That's what they do. That is their purpose. But they have limited power. There's only so much God allows them to do. Who is like unto thee, O God, among the gods? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders? Remember, with the 10 plagues on Egypt, although the magicians and sorcerers of Pharaoh, although they had a bunch of fallen angels around them guys, giving them little signs and stuff, so they appeared to have power. Again, not one of them tried to counteract anything that God did, because they can't do that. One, they cannot counteract God, and two, what God did, and the fallen angels are actually obedient to God. What God has done, God has done. They ain't got nothing to do with that. Whether the sorcerers and magicians understood it or not, no one ever tried to counteract anything that God used Moses to do. They did appear to copy it or do something a little bit smaller, because, again, they're angelic beings. They are fully powered. They are fully powered. They can do stuff. They're allowed to do limited stuff. It says, thou stretchest out thy hand, and the earth swallowed them. Verse 13. Thou in thy mercy hast led forth the people which thou hast redeemed. Thou in thy mercy. The Israelites were in need of mercy and were shown mercy. What were they guilty of? That they needed mercy. Yeah, a lot of them were idol worshipers too. Yes, and you will see it over and over and over again as they're wandering off in the wilderness. You will see their love for idols and idolatry. It says, thou hast girded them in thy strength unto thy holy habitation. God will keep them and preserve them during the entire time of their wandering. Yes, he's going to have to execute judgment on them a whole bunch of times, but he is going to keep them and preserve them also. Again, like I said, they're in the desert. The sun ain't going to bother them. The sun ain't going to fry them. The cold ain't going to freeze them. Their clothes won't wear out. They will not get sick. That's an important thing. They did not get sick. That many people wandering around in a caravan like that, there probably should have been some diseases and stuff passing through, but they did not get sick. From time to time, a bunch of them were put to death. Like the ground would be opened up under them and swallow them. But it's not because they were sick. It's because they were just an walking, talking, living, breathing abomination that were a bad influence on their children and grandchildren, so God removed them. And it kept happening over and over and over. You would think, hey, we learned our lesson, but you would be wrong. That's not how the nature of man works. There ain't enough punishment in the world for somebody to get right with God. There ain't enough fear in the world to scare somebody into getting right with God. All right. Get on down to verse 17. We're talking about celebrating God's victories. This is the thing. Celebrating God's victories. It says this, verse 17, 18, 20, and 21. This is what it says. Thou shalt bring them in. I'm going to start at verse 13. Well, I already just read verse 13, but I'll read it again. Verse 13, I'll read it all the way through. Thou in thy mercy hast led forth the people which thou hast redeemed. Now, they've been redeemed and freed for a reason, not so they can be free. They've been redeemed just so they can be redeemed. They've been saved and spared for a reason. It's like Christian today, the saved today. You're saved for a reason. You're saved because there's a work for you to do. Same thing as reading God spare the Israelites, for them to evangelize, to learn the worship of the one true God, which points to the coming Messiah, the Savior. That is the key thing. The Christ, the Savior, the Messiah. That is the key thing in the worship of Jehovah. That is the thing in the worship of Jehovah. That is the thing that all the offerings point to. That is what the Israelites were freed from bondage in Egypt and given the law in its entirety, which includes the accounts, the worship account, the law, the Psalms, and the prophets, and the offerings, the purpose of the offerings. It's all about getting people saved from eternal damnation. Jesus, on the night when he used to be crucified, when he established the Lord's Supper, he took the elements of the Passover. The Passover is the ordinance that connected the Israelites in their duty and responsibility to evangelize the land of Canaan and beyond. That is their purpose, to evangelize the land of Canaan and beyond and teach the worship of the one true God. But again, built into that is the coming Messiah. Just took the elements of the Passover and established the Lord's Supper. Later on, he would issue to the church, establish the Lord's Supper with the church, the ordinance of the Lord's Supper, established the duty and responsibility of the church to evangelize the world, telling them about the Messiah, the Christ, whose name is Jesus. The single purpose of God throughout the history of mankind has always been the same. Now, thou in thy mercy hast led forth thy people, whom thou hast redeemed. Thou hast guided them in thy strength unto thy holy habitation. Verse 14. The people shall hear and be afraid. These are everybody else. Everybody, when here the Israelites are coming. Yes. It says, sorrow shall take hold of the inhabitants of Palestina. The inhabitants of Palestine. Israel shall be afraid and sorrowful. Verse 15, then the dukes of Edom shall be amazed, the mighty men of Moab, trembling shall take hold upon them. Say, all the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away. The fear of Jehovah will be on everyone when they see the Israelites coming. The Israelites are nothing. The God of the Israelites is everything. It says, fear and dread shall fall upon them by the greatness of thine arm, by the greatness of Jehovah. It says, they shall be as still as a stone till thy people pass over. Now, that is God's intent, that all the other nations, when they see the Israelites coming, they just say, come on through. Please, pass through, pass safely through. Go ahead. We ain't going to get in your way. That's God's will. That ain't what humans are going to do. It says, O Lord, till thy people pass over, which thou hast purchased. Verse 17, talking about celebrating God's victory. It says, thou shalt bring them in and plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance. It's talking about the Israelites now. It says, in the place, O Lord, which thou hast made for thee to dwell in the sanctuary, O Lord, which thy hands have established. Verse 18, the Lord shall reign forever and ever. And a simple statement of reality. Verse 19 says this, for the house of Pharaoh went in and his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea, and the Lord brought again the waters of the sea upon them, but the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. They're recounting again, the gods of Pharaoh, couldn't do anything. They couldn't save him. They couldn't save Pharaoh. They couldn't warn Pharaoh. Verse 19, or verse 20. And Miriam the prophetess, after the Israelites, this is a song that Moses and the Israelites are singing. They're singing this. How is it that they can sing this? This is the hand of God. This is the hand of God giving them all, working, putting them on one mind of one accord so they can sing this. They can do this. God does things all the time. You see it in these accounts. Yes, how can they know this? The Bible is telling you God is giving them a knowledge of this stuff. This is what God, the Bible is telling you what God himself is doing. He's the one responsible for all this stuff. This ain't about these people. It's about him and how he's using them to be a benefit to literally everybody. And Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a thimble in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. And Miriam answered them when they sing. Did the people sing? Yes. Then Miriam and a whole bunch of women, they sing. It says, sing ye to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider shall be thrown into the sea. And that is the end of this song. The next part goes on that's the end of the song. That is the end of the song. This is talking about celebrating God's victory. Then it go back to work. Then the account goes back to work, other stuff Moses is doing. But this is the account of time to celebrate the victories of God. Some are big, some are not so big, but always all credit, all honor, and all glory is given unto the Lord. We thank you all for joining us here this afternoon. Again, we hope something that is said will be of some spiritual gain and benefit to you. We say have a wonderful day, have a wonderful week. May God smile upon you and favor you is our prayer, and may you act in a way that God can bless you for your obedience. Have a wonderful day, have a wonderful weekend.